this stuff is the highest form of inquiry, and it can pay off, not in the sense of a goal at the end of, a lot of hard work, but it can pay off in the here and now through, again, letting go of that story of you, stepping aside, because you're in the way. I was in the way because of expectations of self and what I thought I should be to other. And yeah, I used to, when I was young, I used to see people and I was think, how can they be, they look confident to me, how can they command this attention in a room and just be so well prepared and so, clear in what they're saying, whatever environment it is, whether it's an IT presentation, it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. What's going on there and how can I be like that? And they must be so knowledgeable in all the environment that they're coming in, that they can come into that room and seem so natural. But of course, that's not what happens. That's not what's happening for that person. What's happening when you see that is there is someone that isn't coming in with any armor on.
Yeah.
Is totally clear, fresh, pristine, and in the moment. It's totally in the present moment and isn't trying to protect themselves.
Yeah. And
it can come across as ease or even confidence, but it's when you see that and you recognize it's something different, it's not confidence at all. What you're seeing is something missing in that person, not that something's added to that person.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that's missing is the self-protection. I have to put on a show here that I'm going to be judged. And when you realize that both your story and everyone else's story is an illusion, then you can play. And then that comes across as confidence or ease of being. But it's misinterpreted sometimes, I certainly did. I couldn't understand it. I wanted that, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. Yeah, it's no defenses. When you see someone that is real, authentic in their being, in the way that they play, there is something very special about that. True confidence, like not even trying to act confident. They do appear confident, obviously, but they don't say, I'm going to be confident today. Just truly somebody being themselves. It is something special, man. And it does come from that, ultimately stems from all of that. All of our suffering comes from that. Having some kind of defense mechanism built up, trying to put on a show,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Zhen Ren, the authentic self in Taoist philosophy. And the authentic self, not in the way it's been hijacked again, in the West and more recent time, not being your authentic self, but literally finding out what you are, not who you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, how could we describe, I'm pretty sure we've touched upon it a little bit here already, but if we can dive into it more, how does this authentic self with a capital S, how does it negate suffering? Like, how do we truly transcend suffering? Why is this the way out of suffering? And maybe some may say the only way out of suffering. How would you describe that? Maybe to somebody that has no idea to what we're talking about right now. How could you describe that simply?
Okay, so first of all, I think we need to be clear about what suffering we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest, first of all, there's no escape from corporeal suffering. Empirical self, the body is going to age and it will pass. So this is the lower self. So the suffering there, it will be what it is. Now it can be tempered by the right attitude, but the body will suffer. Okay, so we can't transcend that suffering. If you've got a toothache, and we all had toothache,
they suck.
Then what are you going to do, man? Are you going to sit and have a deep meditative half hour, or you're going to take painkiller or visit the dentist? So I'm not saying that you can't make it a little bit more bearable with the right attitude of mind, but nevertheless there's suffering there. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the suffering that we can perhaps do something about is a psychological suffering. And that's probably 95% of our suffering. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, the body itself has an innate intelligence left to its own devices. You know, you just have to look at the animal kingdom to see how animals, you know, deal with ill health and death. You know, it's serene, it's beautiful. So the body is the body. We'll talk a little bit more about that if we have time, but the suffering that we can perhaps transcend is the psychological suffering. Okay? So when we look in the mirror, we see a mind-body unit. It's form and it's psychology. It's a mixture of the two. We pretty much understand what the body is to a large extent. Mm-hmm. Psychological suffering, of course, is what the Buddha talks about, which is attachment. You know, it all comes from desire or attachment, wanting things to be different to how they are. And linked with that is our attachment to the thinking, our connection to thought. And most people haven't even considered the possibility that they are not what they think. It's not that they believe what they think, that there's just no separation there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the metaphysical transcendence of self is a transcendence of psychological suffering by recognizing what you are not. It's back to the negation again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the easiest way into that is to negate thoughts, and it's very easy. Now, this is a practical and applicable methodology based in logic. You can separate from any thought, given the right intention and the right focus. You can separate from any thought. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can't stop the thoughts arising. Okay, might as well try and stop the tide from coming in. Mm-hmm. The fact you can't stop the thoughts again is an indication that you're not the thought. Okay, and the fact that you can't decide never to have that thought again, wouldn't that be wonderful? If you could decide, right, well, that's not really serving me, so I will do away with that thought and that will never enter my head again. Yeah. The fact you can't do that as well is an indication that you're not your thoughts. Mm-hmm. So bringing it back down to being able to separate from a thought, okay, this is often called a witness perspective.
Yeah.
Which can get us into difficulties, but it's a good first step. It depends on where you are in your conscious awareness, but it's a good first step for someone who's never considered the possibility that they're not their thoughts. Yeah. This would be, and I work with people at all different levels of, let's say, conscious awareness. So I get a feeling early on in the sessions where someone's at, and so I hopefully pitch it at the right level. So if you can separate from a thought, then you're not the thought. That's the beginning of recognizing what you are not. And of course, with that goes beliefs as well. You know, your beliefs. People identify strongly with their beliefs, whether it's a religious belief or a belief in their football team or a belief in themselves, or doesn't really matter. Yeah. So that is ignorance.
Yeah.
Not seeing. You're identifying self-worth. There is no self. You're misidentifying self as thoughts or beliefs. Mm-hmm. So that's the psychological suffering, and we can do a lot to transcend that in this mind-body unit and the time we've got here.